age at death, sex, race or ethnic group or ethnic groups. Many individuals have mixed ethnic backgrounds. And then we want to know time since death. The person died 500 years ago, the police just get starry-eyed and walk away. Even 100 years ago or 50 years ago, but if the person died like 6 months ago, then they have more interest. How did the person die? What is the cause of death? Et cetera, et cetera. Historical evidence. The individual ordinarily leaves clues as to when the person died, especially if it's in a large time span, hundreds of years instead of tens. For instance, the teeth are ground down in individuals who eat grains that have been ground down by stones. If the individual was a Native American and the Metlapil and Metate were used, chances are the teeth have been ground down quite a bit. If it is a white person, before about 1900, the teeth would be ground down a little bit. If it's a colonial situation, and the person has very few teeth, chances are it's a white person. The individual has lots of teeth, chances are it's a Native American. Why the difference? Native Americans brush their teeth. Whites had more sugar in their diet. Facial reconstruction. If we can possibly identify this individual as an historical person who had a portrait made, photograph, whatever, we might be able to do a facial reconstruction and help that way. And finally, if there's enough DNA in the body, there usually is if it's in the last 500 or so years. Sometimes not in the East, for instance, Native American burials from around 1200 to 1300 usually leave just chalk marks and some tooth caps, the enamel on the rest of the body is just gone. But sometimes we can get DNA. DNA degrades through time, but we can still maybe get it. Well, let's look at the body again in terms of taphonomy. In archaeology, the archaeologists have done their job, gotten the individual down to where they can expose the total body. Taphonomy suggests that the feet were hacked off somewhere along the line, and the head was sort of thrown in. Sometimes in burying people, they'll hack the feet off because they just don't want to dig anymore, just to bother. The coffin's too short, or whatever. Yeah, so that happens. When the head was kind of thrown in there, it looks like the head was severed from the body at one time after death, or at death, as the case may be. Well, let's lay the person out and do the forensic autopsy. So what do we have here? Well, we've got a classic body. We have almost all the bones, which is really great because if coyotes have gotten at a body, almost all the smaller bones are eaten out and the ends of the long bones are gone. So from this we can determine stature of the individual even though we don't have feet, because we have good estimates of stature from femurs. We have the femur that gives us a pretty good estimate of how tall the person is, and the arm bones also will help. The tibia and tibiae and fibulae are gone, the ends are gone, so we can't use that very well. But we can put the stature on this individual. Also, there's this peculiarity. Notice the backbone.
Scoliosis.
Scoliosis, exactly. That's a classic case of scoliosis.
It's the king.
It's the classic case of scoliosis. So let's look further. I'm going to give away one thing here. Buried in England, it's a white individual. Big surprise. It's also a male. Let's look at the vertebra. There's extensive arthritis on the individual, which usually indicates old age, anything above 50 or 60. However, analysis of the ribs I don't have any photographs of the rib ends in the back here, but that is a pretty good indicator of age, and the age was estimated by anthropologists of between the ages of 31 and 41. So we have a white male, age 31 to 41, low arthritic development, scoliosis. It's about time since then. Can we get any clues there? Well, we don't know. He's buried in a car park that used to be an abbey. Probably old. Bones are fragile and highly tainted by the ground. They're dark. The teeth are ground down more than modern teeth, so we expect this person to have been born sometime well before 1900. There's no fillings in the teeth, so we don't expect the person to have been born before about 1850 or so. Yes?
Why are older teeth more ground down? Does that have to do with tooth decay, or just red, or just
Because before 1900, a lot of the grinding of grains was done with stones. Now it's done with steel, and the steel doesn't leave any grains in it. But before then, it was done with stones. If you go to Liberty Park, Brigham Young's mill is there, and there's a huge millstone right in front of the building. And that was the kind of stone that was used on a more industrial scale to grind down grains in the 1800s, 1700s, and before that. Now, Native Americans with Metlapil and Metate often had so much sand in the grains that they had that the teeth are worn down faster than cavities could form, and so by the time they got to be 50 or so, they were worn down to the gums, pretty far down. So it depends on their diet, but that's the reason why. So good question. Good question. I like that. Fillings were, actually the Romans did a little bit of it, but not very much. And then it was discarded. Usually if you just had a bad tooth, they'd pull it out or they'd knock it out. Indians had a bad tooth, they just put a piece of wood here and whack it with a stone and would knock it in. Europeans would try to pull it out ordinarily. Some teeth are missing, but the alveolar processes are healed. And so if the person lost some of his teeth well before death, when the tooth is taken out, you lose a socket, but the socket is eventually healed over, and you'll see what that looks like. What cause of death? See anything that might leave you unhappy?
It's probably something to do with the head, I would assume.
Yeah, there are two things there. One of it's a little harder to see, and that was probably the one right up there. Just above the Raymond Magnum, and that was probably a sword or a knife for us. That'll ruin your day. And then somebody's cleaved a piece of his head off here. We don't know whether that was a cause of death or whether that would give you more than a headache, because it would probably take a little bit of the brain with it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, thanks.
Pardon?
I actually thought that because the head was detached and crooked, that maybe he had fallen a great distance onto it.
Possibly. Well, let's look at a little bit more. That's a good point. In other words, the head came off. That is sometimes done in hangings. For instance, Saddam Hussein's half-brother was hanged, and they made the drop too much, and the head fell off. The head popped off, and he was hanged, which is a real mess. Pardon?
It was very embarrassing.
Yeah, it's very embarrassing. A hangman does that. It's just very bad. That happened to an outlaw too, here in the West. His name Blackmore. At any rate, he was. Everybody was standing around the gallows, and he went down. The head popped off, and everybody got splattered with blood. Kind of a mess. Yes.
So that kind of answered my question. But so was the head completely detached, or was it just like slightly?
It was detached. It was detached. That big gash there may have been part of the detachment. So, well, anyway, let's see if we find any other clues. There's a hole in the back of the head, and anthropologists didn't